An appeals court today rebuked the administration in the case of the mistakenly deported man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that we've been covering. The administration has been accused of basically flouting the order to facilitate his return. There's been a lot of debate over what that word will now require, and the judge says it's difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter. But in this case, it's not hard at all, saying that Trump administration lawyers are asserting a right to stash away residents of this country, America, in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Those are strong words and, if you're keeping track, stronger than the way Chief Justice Roberts put it in the unanimous opinion that did rule against Trump but has yet to result in the return of this individual, to effectuate the result, as lawyers have said. But this is still early days for this clash. Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland went to El Salvador over this issue, saying that he has his own standing in the co-equal branch of government because this is a constituent. And he states that despite making that full trip, he was denied entry into the prison where he wanted to inspect and work on this issue in order to check on, at the minimum, the presence and welfare of Mr. Garcia.
Our goal was very simple today, which was to check on the health and well-being of Kilmar. We were stopped by soldiers at a checkpoint. We were told by the soldiers that they'd been ordered not to allow us to proceed any further. I do intend to keep at this until we ensure that Mr. Abrego Garcia has his rights to due process.
Remember, that is due process that has been denied. The Supreme Court saying not only was it the mistake that the Trump administration admits, but the individual should be returned. And as I've told you, if they get away with this, and that can happen to that individual, it can happen to others. And if an American says, hey, I'm an American, I shouldn't be rotting away in a foreign prison, well, who would they be saying that to if due process is destroyed and they get away with it? That's why the stakes are high on this issue. The district judge indicates she may hold the government in some type of contempt. And the judge overseeing a related case on the wartime powers here also alluding to contempt over the defiance that those officials turn around the original flight to El Salvador. All of this is about power. Can Donald Trump seize wartime powers when there is no declared war against El Salvador or this gang? A judge is also weighing if the government should be forced to give notice to people that it would ever deport in this manner, since this is clearly on the table. And plaintiffs' lawyers noting the last time this act was even invoked, it was World War II, and those deemed to be dangerous to the public during a world war had a month's notice before they could be removed. So if you're watching and thinking, well, we got to be tough on immigration, or you have a person who's more sympathetic to Trump and MAGA and says, hey, it's time for tough measures, the lawyer's pointing out there, we're not even at the World War II level due process. And I don't think anyone can seriously say that these threats, which are, of course, real to people, we have gangs and other violence in this country, I don't think anyone can seriously claim they're at the level of Germany and Japan in World War II. As for Trump's so-called retribution tour, administration is going after these schools we've told you about, including Harvard, because they won't buckle to a big government shakedown. And Trump is hitting back in ways that may or may not be legal. A lot of this is being tested, but trying to seize and freeze over $2 billion of what was already authorized funding for Harvard. And some of that money goes to things everybody wants, like solving Alzheimer's. The Post reports that the government also had no proof of any specific laws broken by Harvard in the review of the documents they did. But the Trump administration now says it will ask the IRS to punish Harvard in what sounds like a political manner, so this probably shouldn't work if there's a factual process, but they want to take away the very valuable tax-exempt status because Harvard is not some for-profit company. It's tax-exempt like universities and houses of worship often are. DHS also threatening to revoke Harvard's eligibility to admit foreign students, saying that's something they could try to yank. The state's Democratic governor, Maura Healey, spoke to us about all of this.
That this is really just another attempt by Donald Trump to silence those who disagree with him, to bully, in this case, our colleges and universities. It's an abuse of power. It smacks of the authoritarian regimes of past when you talk about silencing law firms, companies, colleges, and universities.
Healy mentions law firms. The top firms are a huge target, and some have already buckled under the pressure. They represent all kinds of individuals. The New York Times reporting that the firms who agreed to work with the administration thought they could cut some kind of deal. But Trump, even on the deal they cut, wants to move the goalposts, basically going from what was going to be selected pro bono cases over time, that's voluntary work, which could take many years, to now arguing maybe the firms have to service his administration as he goes. Negotiating trade deals, which, by the way, most people say is not how that really works and is not realistic, or defending his own chosen allies. It's all adding up really fast. There's a lot of concern, there's a lot of folding, and there's some high-level resistance. What is the right path, and how do you challenge these things when you know practically the Supreme Court can barely get its own recent order enforced?
Well, I think that the Trump administration is going so far on a number of fronts that they're forcing a confrontation, right? I mean, the courts can't simply roll over and let the government defy their orders. Harvard can't just roll over and accept $2 billion in cut funds and accept the government's demands, which were essentially a kind of takeover of the university. There are just some basic principles at stake, and judges are going to continue to care about the rule of law, and some of them will try to stand up for it. And universities care about academic freedom and being able to make their own decisions. And so I think the Trump administration is kind of forcing a test of these limits in a way that is creating more resistance from these really important parts of civil society than we've seen yet. And we'll see if the politics shifts, right? I mean, Trump seems to think that by keeping the focus on immigration or attacking an elite school, that that's a win for him politically. But when you go this far and you just deny people any chance for a hearing when you are snatching them up and scooting them off to a really brutal prison in another country, that may be a bridge too far for a lot of Americans.
Right, and it's certainly anti-conservative in the traditional sense, anti-American in that the due process and habeas rights are one of the fundamentals going all the way back to the Revolution. You mentioned the defiance is on purpose. When the ruling came down on Garcia and they said facilitate the return, in those breaking coverage first few minutes, I discussed with another lawyer, not unlike yourself, a legal expert, that a lot was going to come down to facilitate because this is not a normal administration that has acted in good faith. Now, if they wanted to just slow roll it, they could say, we'll see. Hey, we asked. They could say in public and then in private have other things going on. They're not doing that. They're not being coy or slow. I want to play for you what the Attorney General says.
He is not coming back to our country. President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story. If he wanted to send him back, we would give him a plane ride back. There was no situation ever where he was going to stay in this country. None.
He's not coming back is a long way from we tried or we want to facilitate. Even by what I called the crack in the door that Chief Justice Roberts left open, even by that standard, she's going further. Can the Supreme Court leave this as the result and then expect future more controversial or tougher case orders to be followed?
I mean, I don't see how they can do that, especially after this stirring opinion today from Judge Harvey Wilkinson, who is a deeply conservative Reagan appointee. He's 80 years old. He's respected throughout the federal judiciary. And he ended that opinion by saying, you know, it's not too late for the executive branch and the judicial branch to show each other the customary respect that our system depends on. So he is kind of imploring the government to change its stance. Now, I agree with you. We've seen no evidence of that from the government so far, but the stakes are really clear, and it's just hard to see how the judicial branch can let this one slide, given the level of defiance and also the kind of farcical nature of what Attorney General Pam Bondi is saying, right? I mean, this is not a decision that is up to the president of El Salvador. The United States of America is paying for the incarceration of Abrego Garcia in another country, but still he is there because of the United States, not because of El Salvador.
Does anything give you hope for the Supreme Court holding the line?
Well, I mean, the opinion they issued last week, while you're right, it had a crack in it or two, did say that the government has to treat this case as if Mr. Abrego Garcia had not been illegally deported to El Salvador, because the government admitted they did that by mistake, and so it's not legal. And I see the Supreme Court language where they say they say to the government, you're supposed to take steps to facilitate his return as going down the right path. That does give me some optimism about the Supreme Court continuing to uphold the rule of law here.